Australia has always prided itself on being a successful multicultural nation, a country built by waves of immigrants who transformed a distant British colony into one of the world's most prosperous democracies. Yet today, something fundamental is shifting. From Melbourne to Sydney, protests against immigration are drawing thousands into the streets. Social media explodes with heated debates. Politicians who once championed multiculturalism now hedge their words carefully. What's happening to the lucky country? The answer isn't simple, and it certainly isn't comfortable. But if we're going to understand this moment, we need to move past the slogans and sound bites and look at what's actually driving ordinary Australians to question the very foundation of their national identity. Walk through any Australian capital city today, and housing has never been more unaffordable. The median house price in Sydney now exceeds $1.75 million. In Melbourne, the median house price hovers around the $900,000 to $1.1 million mark. Brisbane has surged to $1.1 million. These aren't just numbers. They represent the death of the Australian dream for an entire generation. The rental market tells an even more desperate story. Sydney's median weekly rent hit $750 in 2025, up 35% in just 3 years. Rental vacancy rates hover between 1% and 1.5%. Anything below 3% is considered a crisis. Stories of 50 people attending a single apartment inspection have become disturbingly common. When people can't afford a place to live, they look for explanations. And the most visible explanation is immigration. Australia's net overseas migration hit a record 518,000 in 2022 to 2023, more than double the pre-pandemic average of 232,000. The population grew by 2.5% in a single year, the fastest rate since 1952. It's a simple equation in many people's minds. More people equals higher prices, and the numbers seem to support this. Australia added 568,000 people in 2025, but built only 179,000 new dwellings. That's a deficit of over 389,000 homes in just 1 year. This is why housing affordability has become the single most powerful driver of anti-immigration sentiment. When young families see their dream of homeownership slipping away while immigration numbers hit record highs, the connection feels undeniable, even if the real causes are far more complex. This anger, this sense of being priced out of your own country, is filling the streets at anti-immigration protests across Australia. Sydney's trains run at 97% capacity during peak periods. Melbourne's tram network, designed for 3 million people, now serves 5.2 million. The average commute time in Sydney has increased from 61 minutes in 2015 to 71 minutes in 2025. Hospital emergency departments report average wait times of 6 to 8 hours for non-urgent cases. GP availability has declined to just 112 per 100,000 people, down from 121 in 2015. The recommended ratio is 140 per 100,000. In outer suburbs, residents wait 3 to 4 weeks for non-urgent appointments. Schools and growth corridors have average class sizes reaching 24 to 25 students, with some reporting 32 students per class. Approximately 850 schools across Australia are using temporary demountable classrooms. Infrastructure Australia estimates the country faces a $300 billion infrastructure deficit over the next 10 years. The federal government invests approximately $15 billion annually in infrastructure, but modeling suggests $45 billion per year is needed to keep pace with population growth of 400,000 plus annually. Every day Australians experience this infrastructure strain firsthand: the packed train, the hospital wait, the overcrowded classroom. And every day they're told the population is growing by 568,000 people annually. The conclusion feels obvious. We're letting in too many people too fast. This daily frustration, this sense that essential services are buckling under pressure, is why infrastructure failure has become a rallying cry for anti-immigration protests nationwide. Despite working full-time, many Australians find themselves unable to afford the middle-class lifestyle previous generations took for granted. Between 2012 and 2025, real wages grew by just 0.4% total, less than 0.04% per year. Meanwhile, productivity grew by 10%. Workers are producing more, but earning less in real terms. While the median full-time wage sits at $78,000, the living wage required in Sydney is estimated at $95,000. In Melbourne, it's $88,000. The gap between wages and living costs has never been wider. There are currently 1.8 million temporary visa holders in Australia, equivalent to 7% of the total population. This includes 665,000 international students, 140,000 working holiday makers, and 180,000 temporary skilled workers. In meat processing, temporary visa holders make up 40% of the workforce, in hospitality, 25%, in aged care, 18%. A 2025 study found that 72% of temporary visa holders were paid below the minimum wage, with average underpayment of $6.50 per hour. These workers are afraid to complain. 83% feared visa cancellation if they reported wage theft. But for Australian workers competing in the same labor market, the result is downward pressure on wages. Industries with higher proportions of temporary visa holders experienced 15 to 20% slower wage growth between 2016 and 2025. For workers watching their purchasing power erode year after year, while temporary visa holders flood their industries, the math is simple. More foreign workers means lower wages for Australians. Whether that's the whole truth doesn't matter when your paycheck hasn't kept pace with rent in a decade. This economic anxiety, this feeling that you're competing with the world for a decent wage in your own country, is why working-class Australians are increasingly joining anti-immigration protests. They see immigration as a direct threat to their financial survival. Today, 30% of Australia's population was born overseas, one of the highest proportions in the developed world. In Sydney, that figure reaches 42%. In Melbourne, 37%. But the pace of change is what unsettles people. In 2006, 24% of Australians were born overseas. By 2021, it was 30%, a 6 percentage point increase in just 15 years. Some Sydney suburbs transformed even more dramatically. Hurstville went from 48% overseas born in 2006 to 67% in 2025. Burwood shifted from 51% to 71%. In 2025, 29% of Australians spoke a language other than English at home. That's 7.3 million people. In Hurstville, 77% of residents speak a language other than English at home. In Cabramatta, it's 81%. Integration metrics reveal challenges. While 83% of first-generation migrants report feeling belonging, only 52% regularly interact with Australians outside their ethnic community. In high-migration suburbs, that figure drops to 38%. Currently, 820,000 Australians speak English not well or not at all, up from 650,000 in 2011. This is perhaps the most sensitive driver of anti-immigration protests, but it's real. When people see their neighborhoods transform within a generation, when they struggle to communicate in their own suburbs, when they feel their concerns will be dismissed as racism, that silence breeds resentment. The fear of being called racist doesn't make the anxiety disappear. It just pushes it underground until it explodes at protests where people finally feel they can speak freely. This cultural unease, this sense of rapid change without consent, is bringing thousands into the streets who might never have considered themselves anti-immigration before. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Australia needs immigration. The fertility rate has plummeted to 1.58 births per woman, well below the 2.1 replacement rate, the lowest since 1932. Without immigration, Australia's population would decline by 2040. The aging crisis is accelerating. In 2025, there are 4.0 working-age Australians for every person over 65. By 2050, that ratio collapses to 2.3 to 1. Age-related spending currently costs $165 billion annually, projected to reach $420 billion by 2050. Without immigration, the tax burden becomes crushing. Maintaining current services would require increasing GST from 10% to 15 to 17%, raising income tax by 5 to 7 percentage points, or cutting services by 25 to 30%. Japan offers a preview. With 1.3 fertility rate, Japan now has only 2.0 working-age people per elderly person, facing hospital closures, labor shortages, and economic stagnation. Their population declined by 2.8 million between 2010 and 2025. Yet when Japan proposed accepting 340,000 foreign workers, public backlash was intense. Singapore compensates with 40% foreign-born population, but even Lee Kuan Yew acknowledged the social cohesion challenges. The numbers present an impossible trilemma. You can have low immigration, or affordable housing, or avoid fiscal crisis, but not all three simultaneously. Yet this demographic necessity doesn't register with protesters facing unaffordable housing today. When politicians say, we need immigration, while services collapse, it sounds like gaslighting. This disconnect between economic necessity and lived experience is why anti-immigration protests have become so volatile. People feel told to accept decline for abstract future benefits they'll never see. The protests reflect genuine grievances mixed with xenophobia, but dismissing protesters as racist misses the point. Consider immigration of 568,000 annually, housing construction of 179,000, a $300 billion infrastructure deficit, 0.4% wage growth over a decade. Together, these create perfect conditions for social friction. Immigration is necessary given the 1.58 fertility rate. But can Australia manage it while maintaining public consent and ensuring infrastructure keeps pace? That requires honest conversations, not moralistic lectures. Acknowledging 568,000 migrants while building 179,000 homes creates crisis. Stagnant wages alongside worker imports demand scrutiny. Without honest conversations, protests will grow. Democracy demands consent. Australia isn't addressing legitimate grievances. Why these protests signal the social contract is breaking down. Australia faces a choice: polarization or honest dialogue. The protests aren't stopping. Neither is demographic reality. Can diverse democracy thrive by facing hard truths? That's today's test.